taking out. I have not. You want me to do anything with them?
No, I already pinned everybody. I'm going to probably end up sitting actually here. So we'll see. Yeah, but they're in the front. Fine, get started.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. We are going to get started in about 10 minutes. I just want to remind you this is a good time to silence your cell phone or turn it off. And also, we invite all gentlemen to put on a yarmulke, a kippah, a black head covering. They are available in the lobby. You can still talk amongst yourselves. It's okay.
You can all still talk against it. This is not going to be a conventional funeral, so.
Thank you, everyone, for your patience. In an effort to be a secure facility, we are still letting people into the campus, so it'll just be a few more minutes. Also, I want to invite you, if you're in the back and you're sitting on a coveted aisle, if you could just squeeze towards the middle so that those who are continuing to come in can more easily just come and sit down. Thank you. And the family really would like you to talk amongst yourselves, so start turning to your neighbor and telling your favorite Don Soffer story. The best one, not enough time, yes. The best stories will be collected and curated and shared later at Shiva. Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, we are going to begin momentarily. Would like to invite you, urge you, and demand that you please silence your cell phones at this time. This is what it looks like. You take it from your pocket, swipe down, press the little icon with the moon on it, you put it back in your pocket. We're going to begin our tribute to the best of our abilities, remembering Donald M. Soffer with ancient words of consolation. This is taken from the Bible at Psalm 23. I'll offer it first in the Hebrew and then share the English translation. Mizmor leDavid, Adonai roi lo echsar, binot asher yarbitzeni, al mei menuchot yinaleini. Nafshi yeshovev, nafshi yeshovev, yancheni v'maglei tzedek leman shemo, gam ki elech Begates al mavet, lo irara, ki ata imadi, shiftecha umishantecha. Shiftecha umishantecha, heima inachamoni, taroch lefanai shulchan, taroch lefanai shulchan, taroch lefanai shulchan neged sorerai, dishanta vashemen roshi, dishanta vashemen roshi, dishanta vashemen roshi, kosi revaya. Ach tov v'chesed yirdefuni kol yemei chayai v'shavti beveit Adonai, V'shavti beveit Adonai leorech yamim. A Psalm of David. Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He makes me to lie down in green pastures. He leads me beside the still waters. He restores my soul. He guides me in straight paths for his name's sake. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for thou art with me. Thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me. Thou prepare a table before me in the presence of my enemies. Thou hast anointed my head with oil, my cup runneth over. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I shall dwell in the house of the Lord forever. As we all say, Amen. There are not a lot of funerals that take place in this room. The Harry and Ida Soffer Sanctuary at the Aventura Turnberry Jewish Center. Usually this room is used for worship, for prayer, for teaching Torah. But if there ever was to be a funeral here, there could be no more worthy life of being honored and remembered in this sacred space than the life of Donald M. Soffer. 35 years ago, Donnie dedicated this sanctuary in honor of his parents. The very name of this synagogue, the Aventura Turnberry Jewish Center, is a tribute to his vision that not only fashioned the city of Aventura out of nothing, but that helped make this synagogue the center of Jewish life that it is today. Donnie and his family have permanent pews in the sanctuary. But when Donnie would come to services, and I won't tell you how often that was, he never sat in the pews, or at least he didn't for the last 18 years that I was blessed to know him. Instead, he would sit right here on the bima, next to me and his longtime friend, Bill Landa, the founding chairman of this congregation. Sometimes we would talk with one another in between the cantors' chanting of the prayers, and sometimes we would talk during the cantors' chanting of the prayers. And in between the quips and the jokes and the one-liners that he always had, there were moments of sanctity. There were moments of solemnity. And I was always so grateful and so inspired to be privy to those because I knew they were rare and private for him. Sometimes I felt I could literally see the nachas, the soulful pride on his face as he gazed out at the packed house of more than 2,000 people on the high holidays. Perhaps only then, when he would sit on this bima, did he truly appreciate that he had built so much more than a beautiful and luxurious city of excellence. He had created a community of meaning, a place where people could find not only enjoyment and entertainment, but purpose and fulfillment. Sometimes Donnie and I would talk about the meaning of life as he understood it. He was the straightest of shooters, and he would say it just as raw and just as honest as he saw it. He would cut through all the noise and get right to the point. He was deeply authentic, and he never sugar-coated his opinions or his beliefs. He also never forgot where he came from, with ancestral roots in Hungary and Galicia, to growing up in Duquesne, Pennsylvania, a small steel town just outside of Pittsburgh. He never forgot the values he learned from his parents, especially his father, Harry, who influenced his life more than anyone. And he never forgot, especially when he was sitting here on this bima, what life is really all about. It's about family. It's about friends. It's about community. It's about creating a legacy, about making the world a better place for others, and about leaving this world just a little better than it was before. Today we gather together in the Soffer Sanctuary to proudly say that indeed Donald M. Soffer lived a long and fulfilling life of meaning and purpose. He loved his family, cherished his friends, and forever changed the world for the better. We extend our deepest condolences to his family, to his beloved wife, Michelle, to his baby sister, Rita, to his former wives who always remained a part of the mishpacha, to Carol, to Patricia, to Marjorie, to his loving children, to Abby, Brooke and her husband George, Jackie and her husband Craig, Jeff and his wife Colleen, Jill of blessed memory, Marcia and Rock, and to his grandchildren Isaac and Slater, Max and Melissa, Lauren, Harrison, Ben, Katie, Logan, Madison, Summer, Samantha, Oliver, Mia, Charlotte Rose, Oliver April, and his great-granddaughter Maya, the matriarchs and patriarch of the family now sit on the bima, his beloved Uncle Gene, his Aunt Francie, and Aunt Bee. Despite Don's larger-than-life presence in this community, in the world of philanthropy and in the world of real estate development, Donnie was a husband. He was a brother, he was a father, a grandfather, a great-grandfather, an uncle, a nephew. He was a family man in the most modern sense of that word. The kind of 21st century godfather whose family ethos was that once you were in, you never really left. His heart was big enough for everyone. And he always made family and friends feel welcome and included, valued and important. Donald Morley Soffer was born in Duquesne, Pennsylvania on September 20th, 1932 to Ida and Harry. 5 years ago, his birthday fell on Rosh Hashanah. And on this bima, he thanked everyone during his aliyah for coming to his birthday party. He was a hero to his younger sister Rita, and the two of them remained close throughout their lives, as well as he was with Bee and Francie and Eugene. As a boy, well, as you might imagine, Donnie was Donnie. Because he was always young at heart. It's not hard to picture what he was like in those early years. Donnie did it his way and may very well have been the inspiration for Frank Sinatra's song, My Way. He was rambunctious and rebellious, charming, athletic, curious and creative, ambitious and daring. Those qualities never faded. He was always a youthful soul, a playful prankster, a child at heart. He could never be confined to color within the lines, to follow rules that didn't make sense, to do things the way everyone else did them. As a boy, he would walk miles on his own, usually without his parents knowing where he was, especially if it was to go see his dear Uncle Eugene, despite being his uncle, was only a year apart in age and was like a brother to Donnie his entire life. Donnie had a lot of friends, and he had a lot of girlfriends. He was tall, he was handsome, and one of the best Jewish football players there ever was. Now, I know that sounds like a kind of backhanded compliment, but it's not my fault that we Jews are generally not known for that kind of stuff. Donnie was a wheeler and a dealer from the very start. As a boy, he used to build model airplanes, and once he told his sister Rita that he had built one that could actually fly, and that she could be in his flight club if she gave him $20. So she did. And the plane flew for a few seconds and then crashed. Eventually, he did return the $20. Another time, he asked his mother, Ida, for $1. A few minutes later, he asked her for $5. And she said, wait a minute, you just asked me for $1. And he said, inflation. Another time, his mother threw him a birthday party during those lean years of the 1930s, and his presence were socks and underwear. He asked his mother how much the party cost. She told him, $10. Next year, he said, just give me the money. It was easy to see, even then, that Donnie was a rare personality, a force of nature ahead of his time, someone who saw things that others couldn't see, someone who did things that others couldn't summon the courage to do. After playing high school football in Duquesne, Donnie went on to play football at Brandeis University, where he was part of the inaugural team, playing both sides of the ball as linebacker and guard, never missing a game, winning many awards and accolades. And after graduating in 1955 with a BA in economics, he was recruited by the San Francisco 49ers. But instead of joining the NFL, he enlisted in the U.S. Army and served our country in the 101st Airborne Division. Following his service, Donnie returned to the Pittsburgh area and worked with his father and his Uncle Joe at their newest family business, Soffer Realty. Over time, Donnie had an outsized impact on the area, building shopping malls and shopping centers, acquiring golf courses, developing recreational real estate in ways that literally broke the mold. He didn't simply make things bigger and better than everyone else. His projects were a class unto themselves, envisioned in ways no one else had thought of before, finely attuned, thoughtfully conceived in ways that would attract people and elevate community life. After doing it in Pittsburgh, Donnie then did it here. Most famously, he saw, in what was nearly 800 acres of swampland between Miami Beach and Hallandale, the possibility of a luxurious city of excellence. It was a vision from which he never relented and pushed through the resisting bureaucratic and governmental resistance in order to make this dream come true. From a scribbled sketch on a cocktail napkin, Donnie and his partners built the condos, the country club, the mall, and this synagogue, and fashioned the very landscape that would become one of the most attractive and exciting cities in America. Donnie was always on the move. He never sat still. He was always active and athletic, even in his later years. One of his grandchildren recalls going to the gym with Donnie, and then Donnie would be able to lift more weights than his grandson. He was very competitive, a quintessential alpha male who always liked to win sports competitions, even if it required a little bending of the rules. He loved piloting airplanes, racing boats, playing golf and tennis, riding bicycles, fishing in the Bahamas, skiing in Colorado. And while Donnie relished his fabulous life, he always cared for those in need. He knew that with great power comes great responsibility. And he saw it as his personal responsibility to generously help people and causes that were dear to him. Privately, he would take care of people he cared about. Publicly, he supported the University of Miami and dedicated the primary research center of their interdisciplinary stem cell institute. He gave generously to his alma mater, to Brandeis, the Simon Wiesenthal Center, this synagogue, the Aventura Turnberry Jewish Center, to United Way, Mount Sinai Medical Center Foundation, the Miller School of Medicine at University of Miami, and in an orphanage in Haiti. And a few years ago, he helped make possible a brand new tuition-free charter school here in Aventura, proudly named the Don Soffer Aventura High School. Donnie was a man of his word. You may not have always liked the words that came out of his mouth, but his words were always real, always authentic, and always honest. He was the type of person who didn't have to sign papers for you to know you had a deal. If he shook your hand, you could count on him no matter what. It was an honor for me to have been able to shake Donnie's hand all these years. Sometimes I wonder if the reason I got this job in the first place is because I grew up in Pittsburgh. Donnie was proud of his heritage. He loved the state of Israel, and he always carried Jewish values in his heart. There are not too many people about whom we could truly say that we would not be here were it not for him. But just as Donnie always spoke the truth, no matter how direct it was, we must speak the truth on this day of all days. And that truth is this: no one in this room, and I mean no one, would be here right now were it not for the life and legacy, the dreaming and the doing of Donald M. Soffer. So thank you, Don, not only for being the legend that you were, thank you for leaving this world a little better than it was when you found it. Thank you for living a life of meaning, of purpose, of passion. And thank you for bequeathing to all future generations a legacy that will always be cherished. May the memory of David ben Chaim Yitzchak ve'Idel, Donald M. Soffer, always live on in our hearts as a blessing. Tehi nishmato tzurah b'tzurah chayim, may his soul be bound up in the bond of everlasting life. And let us all say, Amen. Going to hear now from family and friends some words of tribute. We're going to begin with his daughter Abby, together with his grandchildren. Various representatives of his grandchildren will offer tributes, and we want to welcome them all up to the bima at this time. They will be followed by his dear friend George Hamilton, and concluding with his son Jeff.
Hi, my name is Abigail. I'm the youngest of the 7 children of my dad, as far as we know. Putting a man as great as my father into words isn't easy, but I'm gonna try. My dad was and always will be my hero. He was so strong. Brilliant and deeply funny, and impossibly generous. And when it came to most of us, he was a total pushover. Whatever dream I had and whatever phase I was in, he was behind me. Whether it was riding horses or the arts, he was my #1 supporter, who would always be beaming on the sidelines, followed by many notes of how I could improve. That love gave me so much freedom to become who I am now and who I will continue to become. Growing up, I spent many weekends and summers with him, swimming with each other at the pool at Porta Vida, biking to Woody Creek in Aspen, or having the Soffer Olympics at his home in the Bahamas, which he named Abby's Cove. So I'm pretty sure I was the favorite. He gave me my love of animals, and he gave me my love of being outside. My education was also very important to him. So when I was 12 years old and we were on our family bike trip through Holland, he decided to take me to the red light district because that was his form of education. That was my dad. He wasn't your conventional father, but there was never a day I never felt his warmth and his love. He thought life was meant to be lived, and he really, really did. I'm still writing the rest of the story that he gave me, but I know I'll carry his spirit forward every time that I trust my gut every time I lead with kindness, and every time I laugh too hard at an inappropriate joke. I know our sister Jill was waiting for him up there with a big hug and probably an apple pie for them to share. He was one of one, and I am very, very lucky to be his daughter.
Hi. What? You can be over here, and you can stand there. Hi, everybody. Wow. I'm Isaac. My brother Max and my sister Lauren and I were Don's first grandchildren. His favorite grandkids? I don't know, but we'll find out at the end of the speech contest. Just kidding, he loved us all equally. Grandpa Don, he wasn't exactly a soft-spoken type. He had a presence, a volume, a rhythm. He wasn't just someone you remembered. He was someone who rearranged the room just by being in it. We loved how he'd exclaim your name when he saw you as if he's been waiting all day to see you. Isaac, Max. And with Lauren, he'd go, hello, Dolly. He'd often confuse her for Barbara Streisand. She asked I included that. Grandpa drove boats like a stunt driver with all his kids attached on inner tubes like we were chum for catching sharks to the back. I know we're in Temple right now, so I'm sorry, but he'd write us his famous letters from Santa with graphic details about Rudolph's digestive issues every year. We'd sleep over and he'd let us raid his pantry for candy and snacks until 1 a.m. He didn't let us, he fell asleep, but we appreciated his trust in us. He glowed wherever he went. He turned strangers into instant friends and showed us all how to love the world and try to make it a better place. We're grateful to have had the grandpa you see in the movies. It was a privilege to have him in the front row at my wedding and at my brother's wedding. He taught us how important family is no matter what through his actions. One of his jokes we all knew like the back of our hands was, what'd he die from? Nothing serious. And that's exactly how he lived. Nothing too serious, but always fully alive. We're lucky we got to experience that firsthand. We're proud to be his grandchildren. And like he'd sing to us without warning, give him the old razzle dazzle. Thank you.
Hi everyone, my name's Harrison. I'm Jackie's son. I wanted to start my speech by first acknowledging Michelle. My grandfather's had a ton of wives, as we all know, in his lifetime. And I can tell you, I've only been alive 28 years, but I've never seen him as happy as when he was with her. And she's been a rock the last, month dealing with his health issues. So, I am very privileged to call you my grandmother, and we all love you very much. My grandfather would never start a speech as well without thanking his ex-wives. So one here today is my grandma, Carol. We love you, Grandma. So I want to tell a story. My grandfather always attended all of our sports games. He was always pushing us to be athletes, almost too competitively. He came to a middle school tackle football game of mine. We were playing the state championship team, and I was a receiver, and I caught a ball, caught a touchdown. He cheered for me. He was proud of me. And it was about halfway through the game. I caught a screen pass, and I'm running down the sidelines. I'm thinking I'm going to score, and I got clobbered. And I remember my mom, she's screaming. She's worried I got concussed. and I see my grandfather, and he's screaming, "That's my grandson, that's my grandson." And he's pointing at a 6'2" black safety on the other team that just crushed me. And that's really the type of humor that he had. I think it was singular. And someone came up to me once and said, it's a real bummer that none of you have his sense of humor. And, I agree. I mean, I wish I had his sense of humor. But he was, a person who you couldn't replicate. He was unique in every sense of the word. And getting to know him, he was obviously many things. He was an avid golfer. I mean, almost to the point where he tortured us on the golf course, and that's why most of us at least don't play. He was the world's worst cheater. Anytime you play a sport with him, the ball would be 10 feet out, and he'd still call it in. And we let him call it in. He was an avid philanthropist. He worked with many organizations like the Women's Breast Heart Initiative by the Ivories and the Humane Society, and he chaired a charity internationally with Michelle in Haiti. And he always used to say on my gravestone, I'd rather be here than Haiti. Sorry, might be inappropriate. He was obviously a titan of industry, and I graduated. I worked for another firm, and eventually I came back and started working within the family. And what became my grandfather then became his favorite title was he was my boss, and I was really lucky to spend time with him. We all were going through his stories of things he built and things he created, and I'm really we're going to miss the times where we got lunch with him and shot the excuse my French, but shot the shit, So his legacy will not be in the buildings he created. It will not be in the communities he built. It will not be in the stained glass windows in this room, which, if you want to ask Rabbi that story, it's a great story. It will be in the way that we treat others, and how we as a community gather to honor his legacy. So, I'm proud to bear his name, and we all collectively are grateful to have had him as our grandfather, and we're going to miss him. Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Logan Soffer. I'm the son of Jeffrey, and this is my sister Madison and my sister Summer. So I first want to start my speech off by thanking everybody here today. It's definitely a tough day, but we'll get through it. We are the lucky people who got to call this larger-than-life man our grandfather. It's hard to sum up someone like our grandfather in just a few minutes. He was the kind of person who walked into a room and instantly owned it, with his smile, his charm, and usually story that made everyone laugh or blush or both. Our grandfather loved three things with his whole heart: golf, women, and family, although I think the order of that changed depending on the day. He was passionate about golf. He played like he was chasing a major championship, and even when he wasn't playing well, he made it look cool. I swear the man could turn a bogey into a brag. We enjoyed our time together on the golf course, and I'll be thinking of him every time I get back out there. My sisters aren't avid golfers, but I know they will feel his presence every single time they pick up a tennis racket. Then there were the ladies. My grandpa had an old school charm, the kind that you don't see much anymore. He loved to flirt, but always made he loved to flirt, but always made people smile. He appreciated the beauty, confidence, and kindness, and he never lost that twinkle in his eye. But at the end of the day, family was his everything. He showed up for birthdays, for holidays, and even every small moment in between. He gave best advice, and even when it was totally off the wall, it was pretty crazy. And he always made us feel like we were the most important people in his world. To us, Grandpa wasn't someone we looked up to. He was someone who made life feel bigger. He reminded us to laugh louder, love harder, and never take ourselves too seriously. He lived full throttle, and and we think that that's the legacy he leaves with all of us today. To live big, to love deep, and maybe hit the occasional perfect drive straight down the fairway of life. We will miss you, Grandpa, but if there's one thing that you taught us, it's to just keep swinging. We love you. Thank you.
Hi, everybody. My name is Oliver, and this is Jacob. We are Brooks kids. I just wanted to start by thanking everyone for being here today. It means the world to our family to see the love, support, and admiration you all had for our grandfather. He was a deeply loving and generous man, someone who always held those he cared about in the highest regard. When he spoke to you, you knew he meant every word. His face would light up the moment we greeted him, always offering a warm, booming hello that made you feel truly seen. To us, he was an inspiration and a role model. He was the most selfless and caring person I've ever known. He was brilliant yet humble, charismatic yet grounded. He had a rare gift, the ability to enter a room and make every person feel like they were the most important one there. Whenever we had lunch together, our conversation would often turn to business. He'd take the time to explain how things worked, what to look out for, and how to think about the future. It wasn't just about business, it was about life. He cared deeply about us and wanted to pass down the values he lived by: integrity, generosity, and hard work. One of the things I admired most of my grandfather was his passion for aviation. He was a true enthusiast. He loved to fly, to talk about planes, and to share his love with others. That passion didn't just stay with him. It inspired his son, my Uncle Jeff, to become a pilot too, and eventually it sparked something in me. I always wanted to follow in his footsteps and earn my pilot's license, not just because of planes, but because flying made him light up. It was something that connected us across generations. His love for flight became a legacy in itself. What made Grandpa so special wasn't just what he accomplished, it was how he carried himself. He never took himself too seriously. He was always cracking jokes, making sure everyone around him was smiling. His laugh was infectious, and he had a way of turning even ordinary moments into something joyful. He had fun, and he made sure everyone else did too. Whenever someone finds out I'm his grandson, a warm smile appears. They tell me how much they admire him, how kind he is, how genuine. It didn't matter who they were. He treated everyone with the same respect, warmth, attentiveness. He believed in people, and they felt that. It's a rare quality, and it's something I will always strive to carry forward in my own life. While it's hard to imagine life without him, we can find comfort in knowing his legacy lives on in all of us, in the way we treat others, the values we carry forward, and the love we continue to share. We will miss him more than words can say, but we will honor him every day by living the way he taught us to, with warmth, strength, and heart. I love you, Grandpa.
Now, you may think this is a cane, but Don said, don't go around with that, make it a putter. So I have a putter. I started thinking about this, as you all did, when it came very close. And I couldn't think of a world without Don. And he was my best friend. He is my best friend. We met under very interesting circumstances over time. he noticed Elizabeth Taylor, and so did I. And he said, "You don't deserve her." He was right, but neither did Eddie Fisher. Don would give me all sorts of advice. He said, "You're an actor, I think. I'm not quite sure." He said, "I've seen some of your pictures." Well, I got used to that after a while. It bother as much as it did in the beginning. But then he would remember every line I had said in a movie. And I couldn't understand how he could do this. Don wanted to be an actor. I have news for you. You all know that. And every time I was in a show or something, he'd come and see me. The one thing he wanted more than life was to be on stage on Broadway. And I said, "Don, I have to do it every night." He said, "Wait, do you realize what it is?" I said, "I know exactly the amount of money." He said, "No, you've got to understand, this is the best thing in the world." And I said, "What is it you'd like to do?" And he said, "I want to sing Razzle Dazzle on the stage on Broadway." I said, "Oh, be my guest." Then I went and I asked the stage manager. He said, "Absolutely not. There's no way that he could do that." While I was talking to the stage manager, Don went out on stage and started singing Razzle Dazzle. He loved this woman more than life. And I asked her if there was anything I could do to spell it for her by coming and spending time with him in the last months. And she'd try to get away for a day or two just to get her hair done and play tennis or something. And Don would sit there and tell me about it. I said, "Listen, Don, I know I have some women in my life." He said, "This is the greatest woman I have ever met. We all love you. We thank you." His family meant more to him than anything on earth, all the material possessions. And as I had trouble with my family in times, Don gave me the most wonderful advice. And he said, "Would you rather be right or would you rather be happy?" And I realized that it didn't matter what the issues were. The most important thing is that you're a Schbooker, that you're family. And I know that that meant more to him than anything. It doesn't matter who's right or wrong in that, just love each other. That's the most important thing you can get through. I have some bizarre stories, and I'll tell them to you if he doesn't mind. Only time. I used to say, you lose your breath, you lose your turn. Well, it happened. You'll have to listen to this. Jeffrey and I were talking about some things, and he said, "Tell that story." I said, "I don't know if I should tell it." He said, "Oh, he'd love it." I said, "I don't know if they would." It was a very bizarre story. We were going down the street in, where was it? It was in Vegas, I think. It was in Vegas, and North Vegas. And I'm in the car with him, and he says, "Damn, she's beautiful." I said, "Well, what are you talking about?" He said, "That girl." And I look out the car, and there's a beautiful girl on a bicycle. Now, she wasn't underage. She must have been in her 20s. And I didn't know what to do, so I reflexively opened the door and knocked her off her bicycle. Don said, "It's perfect." He got out of the car, ran around, and said, "Can we take you anywhere?" The next thing I knew, she was on a plane on her way to the Bahamas. And Don said, "Make sure she's got her passport." I said, "Oh, we better make sure she's got her birth certificate." Things happen like that with Don. You didn't know exactly what was going to happen. Let me see. I tried to write down in the middle of the night when I had more calls than I've ever had in my life last night from people telling me, "Talk about that." I can't talk about that. Well, one of my favorite things was we were in We were in Cipriani in New York, and it was one of those things where the head waiter knows you and he's got 500. And Don was holding court and everything, and he said to me, why do you always look so put together? I said, because I am put together. I put on the right suit, I put on the right thing, I get the right haircut. He said, well, I don't understand. He said, my suits don't look like that. I said, well, you have big feet. I have what? I said, yes. I said, I take my pants off and have them repressed during the day. You repress your pants? I said, yes. I said, but you can't do that. Oh, yes, I can do whatever you do. I said, well, all right, I bet you $1,000. Don said, $1,000? He said, make it $5,000. I said, perfectly all right. We stood up. I took off my pants over my shoes. It drove him crazy. He said, you want to double the bet? I said, I would love to. He got up, and he couldn't get the shoes off. He couldn't get the pants over the shoes, so he stood there and I stood there in our underpants in Cipriani's. Now, that's Emma's story, and the guys there, they come in, we used to get a standing ovation. His things were not like anybody else's. Now, I remember one time I was doing he loved Sinatra, and I had been asked by George Schlatter to do the birthday or the dinner. No, it was Will Rogers Award Frank was getting. Ella Fitzgerald sang, and Sammy and all the guys, and they asked me for some reason, it was kind of an idea of a joke, they asked me to get up and ask Frank to sing. And I thought, this is a great honor to do this. So I got up and I said, Frank, and I got up and Don said to me, call me before you do that. And I called him and he said, under all circumstances, don't ask Frank to sing. I said, why? He said, he'll have Jilly kill you. He does not want to sing. Don't ask him that. He said, they put you up to it. I said, I don't believe that. He said, well, find out. So he said, do that thing you do instead. So I got up in front of all the people and I said, Frank, I hope you don't mind if and I saw that look in his eye that he was going to kill me. And I said, I wonder if it's all right if I ask you if I could do my impersonation of Julio Iglesias. Frank fell down and applauded, and I said, Don, how'd you know? He said, that's Frank, I know Frank. That was the guy, and I love that man. I don't think any man in my life, father and brothers and such, stood up to the relationship we had. And I can only tell you, it's an incredible pleasure to be here. Even though he's there, we're here. There is nothing quite like being a friend of Don Soffer's. You stick it out to the end. Pull together, be family, love each other. It's the most important thing you can do.
So bear with me here, guys, because I don't know how this is going to go, but, you know, my father was, as we've all heard from all his grandchildren and George and everybody here, first of all, I'd like to thank everybody for being here, because my father was all about people and friends, and even if he just met you, he wanted, you know, you to feel good, and he was just that kind of person. It was just all about his life. So first of all, I'd like to, you know, my sisters are all here. They're all, you know, we've all been getting along, which fighting in the Soffer family is not unusual, but it's okay. We always fight and go to lunch. So, anyways, I just tell a quick story about George, because I have to say as well, but James Kahn was one of my dad's close friends for many years, as a lot of people know and probably knew him. Him and George were in always a stiff competition over my father's attention. Where are you? Why are you hiding in a corner? Sit down. Anyway, so years ago, when we were developing in Las Vegas, and we had given a big donation to the Nevada Cancer Institute, so they wanted to honor my father in front of like 3,000 people. And most of these people in Las Vegas, it's not like Florida where everybody knows us. there were people that didn't know us, know this family. So, of course, Jimmy and George were arguing over who was going to speak first. So, of course, Jimmy won, and he spoke, and he always had a one-up George. So I think it was, did you speak first, or did Jimmy speak first? Oh, Jimmy speak first. And they introduced George. He said, listen, I just want to finish my speech, and I'd like to welcome the next speaker, who just got voted the second best-looking black man in America. So that was the humor between the two of them. They were always in competition, and my dad loved that because he loved to see people, he loved to see his friends go at it with each other. And I'm sure most of the people in this room all have a story, or you all do have a story about my father. So that's important. So, getting into the real stuff, obviously you heard from the rabbi's early life in Pittsburgh, and playing football and growing up in Duquesne, and my grandfather, who was a sort of a wheeler dealer. He wasn't like my father. He wasn't a real estate developer. He didn't. He was a business guy. He would see something. He would love to play cards. He gambled. Would gamble all night long. Big gambler. Just so funny. I ended up in the gambling business. And my father, obviously, went to school in Brandeis. He wasn't much of an academic, but he played football, and they wanted to create a football team there because they wanted to, they had hired a coach called Benny Friedman, which was a famous coach, and he recruited my father, and he went to Brandeis, which my father was obviously wanted to go. So in Brandeis, I was founded, one of the founders was Albert Einstein, so my father felt like that would be a good thing for me to go, and I'll go, but he wasn't really much of an academic. My dad was really all heart. He would do stuff, and he just, everything was from the gut. Even a speech, he wasn't going to sit here and read off of a speech, of a piece of paper. Just go for it. He just would speak from the heart. So that's why some of the stuff becomes unfiltered, and some of that a lot of that has passed through me. So excuse me if I'm like that, but just the way we were raised. So he did that, and then of course he got into the shopping center business. And the reason how he got in the shopping center business, my grandfather and his uncle built a shopping mall together called Olympia Shopping Center. I don't know exactly where in Pittsburgh, in one of the suburbs, but they did that. Where? In McKeesport. Okay, my aunt's here. So, and he did that because he was getting in business, and then his father and his father's brother were in business together, and then my dad decided, it was kind of a back and forth, and they decided to split up. So my father was learning how to fly, and he would go and fly at Allegheny County Airport, and he'd fly. And one of his flight instructors was friends with one of the main real estate guys from Penny's, and he was trying to build a mall in the South Hills of Pittsburgh, and they were having problems with another developer. And they said, talk to my dad, and my dad said, I'll do it, And of course, he put it all together and got it built. And it was South Hills Village Mall, opened in 1963. It was the largest enclosed mall in the world at the time. And then, of course, he went on to Monroeville. And Monroeville was a little more challenging for my father, although it was very successful, but it was a mountain, and it needed to be blown up. So not many people can go and look at a mountain and say, you know what, I'm going to blow that up and I'm going to build a mall there. And he did. And that was very successful. And then, of course, in the late 60s, my grandparents used to spend the winters down here, and my grandfather played a lot of gin and cards at the Eden Rock. And then he would go out in the afternoons and look for property. And he came across Aventura. And, of course, brought it to my father because, once again, my grandfather was a deal maker, but really not a developer. How are we going to put this together? So my dad got a hold of it and went up and got all the entitlements up in Tallahassee, convinced the governor this was a great place and a great thing to do. And then, he got all the permission, flew up there and got everything done, and then just started dredging. This was swampland. And, I say to people, there's developers, you guys have all lived here, you see Miami, obviously as it's grown, but when you look at areas and you see what they are, and it's very easy to go and buy a great piece of land on Miami Beach, in the 50s, or some prime property, but when you look at an area like Aventura, when it was started, there was nothing. People used to say to him, I know some of his neighbors were here at the Maliniks, used to say, your dad's nuts. Nobody was going to go up there. It's just swamps and crabs. And there was. So he had to create a whole environment here. And that was a visionary thing. He was a visionary developer. So when he did all that, he basically said, okay, I want to do this. I'm going to build a mall. It started with the idea of, hey, I'll put a mall there, but I'll put golf, I'll put tennis, and I'll, do all the amenities and make people want to live here. So his really main motivation started when we lived in Florida in the 70s, because in the 70s you had places like the Palm Bay Club and the Jockey Club, and of course the Cricket Club. And then he's decided, well, I'll build Turnberry. I'll just build the best place here, and people will come there and they'll buy apartments from me, and I'll sell them from up to $2 million. And this is in the late 70s and early 1980, Turnberry opened, and he built a whole resort there, which really he sold people a lifestyle. It wasn't about, you buying a nice apartment with a nice view. It was about selling you a lifestyle, and they bought it, and they loved it, and everything from there, obviously, is history. And that's how he put the celebrity golf tournaments and had all the events and the tennis tournaments, and he brought people in and built, put all these hotels. He put a hotel at the country club, a small one, but that was to make people live here and see what he was doing, come here and see what he was doing. So from that perspective, he's a one-of-a-kind developer. He's not, there's a few of these guys that are out there, but there's a lot of guys that, starting from nothing and creating something is not easy. So I wanted to say that because I know there's been a lot of, and the rabbi and the kids did a wonderful job. So, and then let's talk about some of my childhood memories. My dad loved, obviously, as you heard it from all the grandchildren, and he loved, the outdoors. He loved fishing. He loved, boating. We would go to the Bahamas. I went to the Bahamas a lot. My dad loved women, so I would go to the Bahamas, and back in those days, there was no cell phone. So he's always tell my mother, hey, I'm taking Jeffrey fishing in the Bahamas, and I ended up with my father and Tommy Barada and, a couple other friends that I never even saw before. So, but that's just the way my father was. But, he's, and then, of course, as he, his, the weddings. Let's talk about the weddings here for a second. The man was married 5 times. Obviously, the first 2 were nice, wonderful ladies, one of them being my mother, who I love. And then my parents got divorced, and I ended up living with my father. So going to high school, which I really didn't like going to school. So I living at Turnberry with my father in the Turnberry years when that was the place that everybody wanted to be at. So you can imagine waking up at 3 in the morning and seeing 400 people in your apartment that you didn't know on a school night. It was a little abnormal, but that was my father. He loved life. He was never, his whole thing to me was, son, your reputation is everything. You only have your reputation. No lawsuits. You shake someone's hand. You honor the deal. That's the person he was. I mean, he built Turnberry, in the early 80s. Interest rates went high. One of the towers, Marina Towers, he had a non-recourse loan on there. And he didn't want the bank to lose money. It was the Bank of New York. And he wrote a check for $15 million out of his pocket in 1982. He didn't have to. He could have walked away, said that wasn't my deal. But that's just the way he was. Those values stand with all of us, all of his children. So for that, obviously, that's unusual. The weddings, I was the best man 3 times. And then he met Michelle. And nobody, excuse my French, there's no effing way that anyone would ever believe that my father would end up with Michelle. There's no way. If I sat here and told you that my dad is going to marry somebody like Michelle, after all the different wives that we dealt with, and girlfriends, a lot of engagements, a lot of girlfriends, but he just managed to do it. I mean, I remember one wedding. Every wedding was like a good party. It was a reason to have a party. So some people say, why'd you get married? He said, I just like getting married. It's a good time to have a party. And this one, the second wedding that I was the best man, my number 2 best man spot, I think it was Marjorie. He had it at Turnberry, the hotel at Turnberry, and The first thing they did, which is unusual, in his way, said, I'm going to have a cocktail party before the ceremony. So, okay. So we have a cocktail party. I remember a lot of people have been to Turnberry Country Club. Now there's a check-in desk and a bar behind it called Soph's, but that was a big room. He has a big party in there. Of course, now it's time for the ceremony. Now my dad's got about 4 or 5 vodkas in him. So I was the best man. I think my grandmother, Ida, was still alive back then. She was alive then. And everyone's sitting down. Of course, I walk down the hall, the thing first. My grandmother walks, and my dad's walking by. I think was he by himself at that time? I think he was walking by himself. He stops in the middle of the procession, right in the middle, and stands up and says to everybody, please hold your table cards and save them. We'll use them for the next wedding. That was my father. So, he loved flying, as the kids all said. I'm a pilot, and, I've flown for the last 30 years and flown a lot with him. He would scare the shit out of my sister Jackie. Really, and he enjoyed it. So, he would fly, and you'd look over, and he'd be sleeping in the cockpit. And a lot of our pilots are still here, so they can attest to that. That was definitely an unusual experience. I had Willie Ivory, who works for us, who's the best. People know him. Willie, one day he's building his home in the Bahamas. I went over there, and he flew right through like a heavy rainstorm, and it was very turbulent. And I looked there. Willie thought he was gonna. I think Isaac was in the plane. They were little kids. Willie turned white. He's, so. Remember that, Willie? Yeah. And he was just unfazed. He was a guy that just lived life to his fullest, as you guys all know. And and at the end, he was generous to a fault. He would give somebody, he'd walk in, giving someone $100 or helping some poor person that needed some help, or sending people to college or whatever. It didn't matter. It was just part of the way he was. And he was just, everything, he was all heart. And, I think his heart lives through all of us and his kids, and it will live through our grandchildren, all the grandchildren you saw up here, and his values, because that's what he was. He was not a guy, and he was a guy that, listen, he started building shopping malls. He could have had 100 malls. He just didn't he didn't care. He just came to Florida, and he wanted to create a lifestyle for people and a way for people to live, and he had a great time doing it. And, he made plenty of money, but he had a lot of fun. And those stories that George says, there's a lot of characters, a lot of crazy stories, but I can't tell you all those because some of them are not appropriate for this time. Let me say, at the end of the day, first of all, I want to, like Slade Harrison said about Michelle. Michelle, you're awesome. And my mother, Carol, who, she paved the way for you, Michelle, because, I can't tell you how many women called the house in the middle of the night looking for my father, and my mother answered the phone. But but that's just who he was, It just, it is what it is. But he loves my mom. I'm very similar. I have all 3 of my ex-wives here too, so they could all get along. So, and 2 of them are sitting next to each other. She's not. I have 2 ex-wives and 1 wife, so I made a mistake. I forgot about that. Sorry, I'm not making. I don't have any plans yet. I just, look. What else did I put notes here because there's so much stuff. There's so much stuff. I can, and there's a lot of people here, and there's people that aren't here. I'm sure my whole family said. The amount of calls and thank yous and condolences. We're so honored, and it's just a testament to who he was, and the fact, one of the things that I'm proud of, I should say, I was happy about that we were able to do is we're burying him in Aventura, so he's not going to some cemetery, and that's something that he would have wanted. Let me see what else. I don't want to forget because let me see. And of course, then all the doctors at University of Miami, they were amazing. The whole hospital, we've been involved, and that is a real unbelievable place for our community, and everybody here really should be honored to have something like that in this community, because it is truly an unbelievable, they have an unbelievable set of doctors, and I want to thank them, and they were just unbelievable. So I'm not promoting but there is no other place to go, so God forbid. And that's it. But Michelle, you're awesome. She's been so great and caring to all of us, me, Jackie, Brooke, Marcia, Rock, and Abby. And so Abby was great too. Abby's speech. And I just want to say, Dad, I love you. He's a legend.
I invite you to rise as we're going to offer now the El Malei Rachamim, the memorial prayer in memory of Donnie, first in Hebrew and then in English, and then we'll remain standing as we conclude our sanctuary service.
El Malei Rachamim, שוכן במרומים, המצא מנוחה נכונה תחת כנפי השכינה, במעלות קדושים וטהורים, כזוהר הרקיע מזהירים. את נשמת דוד בן חיים יצחק ועידו שהלך לעולמו, בגן עדן תהא מנוחתו, אנא בעל הרחמים, אז תראהו בסתר כנפיך לעולמים. וצרור בצרור החיים את נשמתו, אדוני הוא נחלתו. וינוח בשלום על משכבו, ונאמר אמן.
El Malei Rachamim, exalted and compassionate God, we ask that you grant infinite rest in your sheltering presence among the holy and the pure. The soul of our dearly beloved Donald M. Soffer was gone to his eternal home. Merciful One, we ask that our loved one find perfect peace in your tender embrace. May his soul be bound up in the bond of life. May he rest forever in peace, as we all say, Amen. I want to invite you, please, to remain in your places. We are going to be escorting first the casket down the aisle, then the casket will be followed by family. Burial will take place privately. I want to let everyone know after the family has departed the campus with the casket, we invite you to make your way home as well. Shiva will take place tomorrow, Tuesday, from 4:30 p.m. to 8 p.m. at the Porta Vida Villa Grand Club right here. And I'm going to turn the microphone over to our funeral director, Michael Blasberg, for some additional logistical announcements.
So the following names, when I call you, please come forward and act as pallbearers. Fritz Gedeon, Isaac Rappaport, Max Rappaport, Harrison Soffer, Ben Bernstein, Logan Soffer, Oliver Perez, and Jacob Perez. Just come forward. And as the rabbi asked, please remain in your places. After the family is out, I'll come back in, and it's really important that we do it this way to maintain the privacy. Thank you.
בסתר עליון בצל שדי תלונן. אומר לאדוני מקסים בצורתי, אלוהי אפתח בו, כי הוא יצילך מפח יכוש מדבר אבות, דברתו יסף לך, ותחת כנפיו תחסן, צינה וסופר רחמיתו. לא תירא מפחד לילה, לחץ יומם, מדבר באופל ירוק, מקטע ברשות צהריים. יפול מצילך אלף ורבבה מימינך, מלך